Greetings everyone, my name is Ross Shain and I'm with Boris FX and Imagineer, and my partner here is Mary Poplin. She's going to be, hey Mary. Mary is our product specialist. I'm sure you've seen tons of videos that Mary has done in the past. Really our goal is to share our tools with you and really connect. The purpose of these webinars is to connect with customers all around the world and share with you what we're working on, latest announcements. And also we really want your feedback, what kind of topics that you guys would like to see covered in these kind of webinars. We're always very open to suggestions. So today we're going to be talking about 360 video. I know a lot of you have heard a lot about 360 video in the last couple of years, and Adobe recently made a huge announcement where their newest versions of Premiere and After Effects have added immersive tools. We're going to show you a little bit of how we work with Adobe. As far as the webinar goes, please feel free to use the question area, the text question area, and Mary will be manically typing.
Yep.
And how's that going so far, Mary?
Pretty well.
Okay, hopefully you guys can see my screen okay and hear me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what we're going to be covering today is really diving into some tools for 360 video and the common challenges of 360 video. I'm going to be showing you a brand new tool that has been just shipped. It's found in Boris Continuum, which is our parent company. And there are 5 new filters that we call the VR unit. So I'm going to be showing you some of these new filters. These filters are currently available for Adobe Premiere and After Effects and Avid, and soon we will be shipping them for OFX, meaning you could run these filters inside of hosts such as Blackmagic Resolve or Fusion or Nuke or Vegas Pro, things like that. I'm also going to be showing you a little bit of Mocha VR, which is our more advanced tool for 360 motion tracking, planar tracking, stabilization, and object removal. And if we have time, I'm going to show you some very cool stuff that we just launched, Mocha VR 5.6 beta, which adds a stereoscopic 360 workflow for 360 video. This is very cool because if you're working in Premiere or After Effects, there's not incredibly, a great workflow for working with stereo. So we're going to show you how this is going to really assist 360 users. So let's get started here. I'm just going to close this here. I just want to mention, the Boris FX website has lots of great tutorials. Anything that we're not covering today, you can really go into this training section up here on the website. If you want to find stuff about Mocha VR, just go to Mocha TV. You can actually just use this little sifting, filtering, so I could look at all the Mocha VR videos. And, we're always trying to add new videos and new content. So there's a brand new one in there that I just created recently, and another brand new one that Nick Haraz just created. And you'll find lots of great videos from Mary as well. So that's under training, and you can find all these different videos. So we're going to start by talking about Boris Continuum. Boris Continuum is one of our flagship products, and there's over 300 different filters for editors and for visual effects. And very recently, we just shipped this VR unit, which can be found here, which are 5 filters for VR. So I'm going to dive into a little bit of the VR unit. I also want to mention, as I bring up Premiere here, I want to mention that the VR unit, these 5 filters, they actually come free if you buy a Mocha VR, so a lot of people don't know that one. So let's look at our effects palette. And here I'm in Premiere, the most recent release, which I believe they're calling 2018. What we have here is I've mapped the 360 button to my Premiere interface. So this is an equirectangular view, and this is a flattened view as if I had a headset. And if I did have my VR headset, you could actually be driving this and viewing this 360 clip at the same time. I'd like to thank Casey Sapp and Matt DeJong at a company called Virtual. They specialize in lots of cool underwater camera work, and so this is a clip that they gave us. So let's go back here to the equirectangular view. And what I want to do is just simply change the hero view, or when we first launched this video, say we wanted to publish this to YouTube or to Facebook or to some kind of VR experience, I want to just change the default view. You can do this here under Adobe has just released these new tools which they acquired from Metal. So there's different tools under this immersive video effects category. So I could rotate the sphere using this effect. But what I'm going to do is show you our version of this, which is basically the VR insert, the BCC or Continuum VR insert filter. And we'll just drop it on here, and we're going to go into our effects controls. So this is just a very simple panning around in the sphere and changing the view, because maybe, let's look at our 360 view, maybe I do not want to start with, I don't want to start with the view and seeing the diver. I actually want to see what he's looking at and kind of feel like that we're moving through the space there. Now, a couple other unique things about this VR Orient tool. Some people ask me, well, why did you guys actually create this tool when, like I said, we have the Adobe ones that are now free? Well, a cool thing that, just think about this, that the BCC tools, they're not just for Adobe. So if you wanted to do set up your Reorient, and I mentioned that this is also going to support OFX, so I could actually save this this Orient that I've set up here, and I could send this to a colorist on Resolve, and they could do the Orient right there. So the tools found in Continuum, they're cross-host. Another nice thing here is you have the concept of presets. So if I have set this Orient on this shot to be, particular, let's just reset that. If I set it up at a particular view, I could hit the Save button, and I could say this is from our underwater project, and hit Save, and it's actually going to show up there in my preset list. So that's a great way to work, especially if you just need to duplicate your orientation or any different effect, and it's going to show up, especially if I made this where I save it is to a shared directory, then all my coworkers can be sharing this particular effect with me.
Right, so it fits into like a multi-host pipeline.
Exactly, it's a multi-host pipeline that goes beyond just Adobe, but you can be doing this, your effect work here in After Effects, in Premiere, in Avid Media Composer, in Resolve, in lots of different hosts. So that's kind of a cool thing. A couple other things that are unique about the this particular Orient is you can certainly show your overlays. You actually have a nice little headset sort of emulation mode here with a before and after that you can change where that view is. So that's like the effect before and after if you don't have a headset. And you can go into a little preview mode here and do a little, basically it kind of emulates what is found inside of Premiere. But if you're in a host such as Avid, which does not have any of these 360 features, but you want to emulate with the headset, you can certainly look at that preview mode there. So that's just a quick VR Orient, and you can see this will work in different stereo formats as well. So next thing I'm going to jump over to is a little bit of just in applying graphics. Okay, so again, we're working in equirectangular 360, and if I want to apply 2D graphics but have them projected appropriately for the 360 work, we're going to basically use an insert filter. So on V1 here I have my shot, on V2 I have a title, and we're going to go into our effects, and I'm going to apply VR insert and show you how there's actually two different ways that you can apply this effect and some of the cool things inside of here. So we'll apply the VR insert filter, and again we'll go into our effects controls, and what we want to do is tell the insert layer that is on V2, video layer 2, and then what we're going to do, instead of apply mode being normal, we're going to tell it to replace, so that it's basically obeying the alpha channel of that title. Now I have this 360 title that is properly projected in 360 space, and hopefully that you guys can see the interactivity. This is accelerated, hardware accelerated, so it's very fast. I happen to be running on a Dell laptop with an NVIDIA card, a P5000, but you can see it's very interactive. Hopefully you guys can see that. You also have some other nice features here. For example, you have I can crank up the anti-aliasing. I have a orientation, so we can change the view, the rotation there. Sort of like a little 3D perspective here. But what I like about this too, another cool thing here, is we also have a repeater. So I can just go ahead and say, let's repeat this on the front and back. Move this back up a little bit. And you can see then, if I go to here, then we've repeated it for the front and back without having to stack up this layer 2 or 3 times. Or let's repeat it for all 4 sides. And then you can see we've just duplicated our layer very quickly like that. Of course, this will work on video as well. You know, so I could bring in regular 2D video, not 360, and create, you know, a video wall or picture-in-pictures, that kind of thing. And we've done lots of tests with stacking these up and have not found any problems with GPU errors or anything. So you can stack up, you know, lots of different VR inserts in here. So right here in my sequence, I just want to show you another way to apply this. And this is a little different, but I want to show you why it's set up like this. On V1, I have my title layer. On V2, I have my video layer, okay? So what we're going to do is, again, apply our VR insert to video 2. And I'll show you why I'm doing this. And I think some people have asked us about this. So hopefully this, if anyone's played with the VR unit yet, this will kind of answer some questions. We're going to make the insert layer the title below it, and you can see it just pops on. So we're actually using this hidden title that's underneath here. But what's kind of cool about this is, and again, you know, we can move this around. I can play with the positioning, obviously. We can move that around. And what's kind of cool is that you actually have an orientation filter and a insert filter built into the same clip. So this is going to give you time for speed as well as for faster render times. So I can say the insert is going to happen after. And if we go down here, you'll see that below here, we actually can change the orientation on my background clip and change the position on my foreground, meaning in this case the insert, the title, all within this one instance, which is very cool. Another neat feature here, that if I turn on my repeater, turn on all sides, right, and let's change the scale a little bit, you have a kind of a neat feature that happens that actually you can see that if you set it up this way with your graphics as a separate layer, that you have a kind of neat ability to overlap these the graphic itself.
Well, yeah, and on a practical side too, you could also use this for a subtitles.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think for those who are just new to 360, it's very, very common that you want to, you know, we don't know where the viewer is going to be looking, right? So we want to put our titles in multiple places. Obviously not as garish as that, but you get the idea that we can use this for lots of different creative ways. So that's the insert tool, VR insert. Mary, how's it going on your end there?
Really well. We don't have a lot of questions yet.
Okay, cool. So one of the big trends that we're starting to see a lot in 360 is stereoscopic. And what does that mean? Well, we have a clip here that was shot by our friends at Prosper VR. And in this case, this is going to be a top-bottom stereo clip. So you're seeing that the left is in the top and the right is in the bottom. This is actually how the camera actually captures it, and we have a stitched file here. And now if we want to add graphics, let's go into our effect controls. I've added the VR insert, and I have just this 3D graphic here, which is basically just a static you know, graphic. And I've set this filter to tell it that our output is top-bottom, not mono, but top-bottom. And what that does, you can see, is it actually will duplicate the insert on both eyes, and then we have a nice ability to change our, again, our position, and we're going to be obeying the proper projection. What I like to show people too is that in Premiere, if we have our, if we're not looking in a headset, but we do have some old-fashioned anaglyph glasses, we can set this to anaglyph, and you're going to be able to see the stereo convergence. If I just pull this out here a little bit, you can see I can actually change the stereo convergence. So if I can make this graphic really pop off the video in a 3D way, as if you're going into a 3D theater and you're seeing this graphic come towards you. So you have this insert convergence right here is found in the VR insert filter. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense, and again, because we're using this in Premiere, any of these parameters are animatable, of course. So it's a VR insert. I'm going to jump to something kind of interesting here. Let's turn off my anaglyph view so you guys can sort of see what I'm working on here.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Can you change the left and right eye disparity in the insert?
Yes, and that is actually what I was just showing.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, so if we go back here, and if I slide the convergence, which is the disparity, see how if I slide it all the way, you'll see that the left eye and the right eye, see how they're positioned differently there? That's literally, that is your convergence. Okay? So if you, again, if we go back to our anaglyph view, that is the disparity, that convergence. And you have control over distance and scale and rotation and things like that.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. The next thing we're going to do is show you, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. What I want to do is kind of show you kind of a cool thing. So here's my logo. We're just going to do this from scratch, right? We're going to take, go to our effects, and we're going to apply the insert to V2. We're going to go to the effect controls. We're going to make the insert layer, tell it it's V2. And what I have to do then, if I'm doing it again, we have two ways to apply that insert. One is with the title below your video layer, and one is above. So this is, in this case, it's above, so we'll just make it, or call it a replace. Now there's my logo. We're going to make the, tell it that this is a stereo top bottom, and then we can go ahead and position this.
Now, is this only for 2D elements so far, or can we insert 3D objects yet using
Yeah, you can insert 3D objects, but remember this is like a 2D projection, right? So it's not using, you know, and especially Premiere doesn't have a 3D camera or anything, so we're just projecting there like that. Yeah.
Right. But would we be able to use like an OBJ file or something and load that in? Well,
you could render the OBJ file with an alpha channel and then load that in. Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me just reset this 1 second. Just, does that make sense, Mary?
Uh-huh. It does.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and set this up here. Actually, I'm gonna let me see if this is. We're gonna come back to that example because I'm just gonna, just for time wise, and I think I don't want to confuse people by going into Mocha too soon. What we're gonna do is, and I do want to jump into stereoscopic masking and tracking in Mocha VR, but let's just complete the VR unit side of things here. Okay, so this is a clip. I'm gonna delete that. This is a clip that our friends at Views gave us, and if you don't know Views, it's a stereoscopic prosumer camera that can shoot both eyes. And I could look at this and obviously pan around in this. Now you'll see in this particular clip, what we're seeing is some shutter problems with the luminance, and that's a mixture of these fluorescent lights and the outdoor lighting, and this can be a real pain that you'll sort of start seeing in some of these kind of cameras. So what we're going to do is use a flicker fixer filter that comes with the VR unit. So we're going to go into, again, it's found under BCC 11 VR, and it's called flicker fixer. Say that fast a couple times, Mary. Flicker Fixer.
Flicker Fixer.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is basically tell this to smooth the temporally smooth the YCC. And if I scrub through here, we'll see we literally, without doing any, and Premiere is going to catch up a little bit, but without doing any more controls than that, we've actually just removed the flickering as I step through there. So it's literally analyzing the clip and matching the luminance flicker on every frame and averaging that out to smooth out and remove any difficult flickering. And because that is a VR filter, you will not have any issues when you go across the seam or anything like that. So we were looking, I think, up in here in this area. I should have rendered this. Apologize, I didn't render this previously, but you get the idea. If I turn off the effect, you know, we had all this flickering in this area. And with the effect, we're going to reduce all those flickering. That's a flicker fixer. Again, it's very interesting to us because as our parent company is Boris FX, and we've had Continuum, and we even have Sapphire filters for quite a long time. If you go to video effects, all these BCC filters, we're very interested to hear from the 360 content creators of what kind of filters, you know, whether it's color correction or film grain, different kinds of effects or transitions. Which of our hundreds and hundreds of effects you think would be interesting to work in the 360 projects? One of my favorites here is our Sharpen filter. So this is a Sharpen filter, and again, Adobe just brought some really great tools to both Premiere and After Effects. So if we go in Sharpen, under immersive, you have a VR Sharpen filter, and that comes free with Adobe After Effects and Premiere, and that's a really, really cool thing. So if we look at that effect, there is just a basic sharpen amount, and you can dial it up or down. And if I dial that up, you'll start seeing, well, we're going to bring a lot of detail back into this shot. But what can happen with some of these sharpen filters or unsharp mask filters is you can start seeing, you know, it's very cool because we're bringing back some detail that was not there. Without it, we have our shot. And let's pan, you know, we can see this when you go through stitching and reorienting and stabilization, sometimes you're processing your video, so even a very high resolution 360 clip can get soft. So this is the Adobe's VR Sharpen filter, but if you dial it too much, you're going to start seeing some ringing. So we also have our own Sharpen that we've had called Magic Sharp inside of Boris Continuum for many years. And we've basically have taken Magic Sharp and tweaked it for 360, so you're not going to have any issues on seams or anything like that. And just to show you the controls here for sharpening based on just the fine details, small, medium, large, you can play with the radius scale, you can play with the threshold, you can play with different kinds of independent controls here. So quite a lot of features here to tune up your sharpening. And so you can bring back a lot of detail. You can bring back some really nice detail there, and if I'll turn it off, without that ringing that you saw in the Adobe's Sharpen. And not to knock that filter, it's a great filter, but this just gives you a lot more parameters here. And again, using the preset idea that we have in Boris Continuum, I can save this, and you can see I could save this already, Hollywood Project Sharpen. So if I have other clips in this project, I can just save this, and it's going to actually show up in my list, and I'm working with other people. As Mary pointed out, we have this kind of cross-host workflow solution, which is very cool. So that's a example of a Sharpen tool. How's it going, Mary? Any questions up to there?
It's going really good. I've been answering a couple of questions. A lot of people want to know how to get actual 3D, like real 3D, into these shots, and you know, I think the solution there is you actually have to do a camera track, an actual camera track. There's cheats you can do, like you could use a render of smoke and you could bring it into the Reorient or you could bring it into the insert and put it in that way, but it would have to be a render that you composite over the top like a layer.
That's correct. So if you wanted to do like a full-blown, 3D, basically composite your 3D assets on top of 360 footage, then in general, and especially if the camera is moving, there's no problem doing that with these tools, and you could even do it in Premiere. If the camera is moving, that's when you really have to get into motion tracking, right, and camera solving. And in Mocha Pro and Mocha VR do have a camera solver, but it is not optimized yet for 360. So in that case, you might use the After Effects camera tracker, or you might even go to a dedicated 3D tracker, something like Synthesize or PF Track or Buju.
Or you could also use the lens tool. If you only had to put a 3D object in one section, you could use the Mocha lens tool to unwrap the shot, do a track for that section, put a 3D object in, and then rewrap the shot if it wasn't through the entire volume.
Yes, and if the camera's not really moving, then yeah, certainly you can composite your 3D assets and elements that way.
Sure.
This might be a good time to jump into some tracking concepts. And again, everything I've been doing so far, I'm showing you this in Adobe Premiere. You could be doing all the stuff I've done so far inside of After Effects or Avid, and soon those Continuum plugins will be available for OFX hosts. I think this is kind of exciting because then you'll be able to do everything I was just showing you inside of Resolve, for example. We see a lot of, since we launched, what was it, February, Mary, I think that we launched Mocha VR? Yeah, so we've been doing the Mocha has been around for quite a long time. And in fact, the software, if you didn't know, we won an Academy Award for our tracking tools. But it's really been about since February that we've been working with 360 video. And we have a very robust solution for 360 tracking, stabilization, and object removal. So this particular shot, we see a lot of these kinds of shots, which are drone shots. If we look up there, there's the drone itself. Let's make this a little bigger so you guys can see. And if we look at our, kind of set up a view like this, maybe this is what we want our viewers to see. This is the kind of thing that could very easily make the viewer motion sick, because these kind of pitch and yaw, kind of like very I call them like rotation. If you think of if you had a headset on and you were literally just nodding your head to the left and right, that kind of motion is the kind of motion that is going to make us nauseous. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the stabilization tools that are found inside of Mocha VR. This is a little quick example of a rendered view. What we're going to do is we can actually do stabilization inside of here. So I'm going to launch Mocha VR and show you how this is done. All right, let's don't save that. Thank you, Premiere. Let's see what happens here. Let's start that from scratch. So yes, we all have issues with we are working on a computer. So let's go apply Mocha VR here as an effect.
Well, and just VR is just heavy. It's just heavy to work with. So sometimes, things hiccup.
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, I actually like to do a lot of this kind of when I'm working on compelling, because you might just want to, as soon as you get your footage and you're done with your stitch, you might just want to do a very quick stabilize to show your clients the file before you do any advanced color correction or processing. So we're just going to, I've tracked these areas here. You can see on the Mocha timeline, the blue represents the area that I've tracked. The next thing we're going to do is go into our Reorient module here. And the Reorient module is essentially, it has two different ways of reorienting. One is just manually, where you could show this reorient and you could move it around here with I could just manually reorient like that. And I'm going to reset that. That's on the right-hand side is the reorient, horizon orient. On the left-hand side, we can actually display a red line which represents the horizon. Okay, so I select my layer that's tracked. I'm going to go into the Reorient module. Then what I'm going to do is just simply adjust this parameter to tell the Mocha layer that I'm selected that we're linking to this distorted horizon. What that does is it actually sets a reference that will then link my shape to that stabilized track.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why you're tracking the horizon and, you know, basically like a little bit more about how the Reorient is operating?
Yeah, think about this, that we're inside the sphere, right? Now we want to find static, relatively static, rigid pixels that are pretty much going to be the same in every shot. So I don't think I would track, you know, I wouldn't want to track this car. I wouldn't want to track anything that is occluded by foreground. I wouldn't want to track this train here. What I want to do is kind of, as the user, I am telling the software that these pixels here should stay put on every frame. So again, if I look at, again, we're inside the sphere, if we kind of think about this, that I'm on this frame, and then that frame and that frame as I scrub through, we actually want to take those pixels and put them back on every single frame. So we're essentially creating a locked down relationship between these pixels, right? Those are the only pixels that we're analyzing, and keeping those locked down on our sphere. Now I do know that people who have been using Mocha VR have been asking us to work on, well, you know, what if our horizon is not visible in a shot? What if I'm going down a hallway and I have no visible horizon? Well, we're actually in our beta, we actually are working on that you could track things that are not just on the horizon to get the same kind of results. So we're really interested in hearing from the beta users on that. So unfortunately I don't have an example of that kind of shot that I could show you, but I can, you know, at this point I can show you. This is in the shipping build, is monoscopic, stereo, horizon, stabilization. Hopefully,
wonderful.
Hopefully that makes sense. Now the way you get inside of Mocha VR, you have some different modules. You know, we have insert, we have reorient, which is where I've done the stabilization, we have tracking, etc. If I close this out of my plugin, back in Premiere now, or whichever host you're running on, I would tell the plugin to render, so I turn on the render, and then this is essentially anything that is in the Mocha interface, close it. When I tick that little render box, that is actually going to render back to the host. Now if you're running Mocha as a standalone application, which I know some people who are actually you know, using things like Final Cut Pro, for example, or I know a lot of Nuke users really love the standalone version. Even though I'm running this inside of Premiere, you could actually render, so just hit the render button, this render button right here, and I could actually export a rendered clip to any format, you know, just as a video file. So I think this is quite interesting, you know, that Mocha as a standalone application can also support lots of different hosts, and as a standalone application we can even do background rendering. So there's it's a very flexible piece of software.
Although, honestly, I pretty much use the plugin. I have stopped using the standalone almost exclusively.
Yeah, that's right, Barry. Same with me. You know, down here in my dock I do have a Mocha VR and Mocha Pro as standalone applications, but ever since we came out with version 5 and in your effects, you know, if I just type Mocha here, you have Mocha Pro and Mocha VR's plugins that run inside of Adobe or inside of Avid or OFX, you know, and Nuke. And same with me. I've just stopped using the standalone because I really like the flexibility of jumping in and out of the plugin. I will make an interesting note here too, in case anyone is curious. I know a lot of users, you know, maybe 80% or 90% of the work they actually do is not 360 yet. They're just getting into 360, and they're, you know, they love what they see about Mocha VR, but their question is, hey, do I need Mocha VR and Mocha Pro? You actually don't. Mocha VR, just think of that as our top tier product. And if I launch Mocha VR and under my lens tab, if I turn off the equirectangular to no distortion, well then this is running as Mocha Pro. So really think of it as if you have Mocha VR, you have Mocha Pro. You have all the features that are found in Mocha Pro as well. Okay, so that was a quick example of stabilization. I think we're doing okay for time. I think the next thing I'm going to do is show you a quick example of just basic tracking, how you work with tracking. And again, I'm doing this inside of Premiere, which you know, doesn't really have the 360 tracking or anything like that that the new After Effects has in conjunction with Metal Skybox, or I guess they don't call it Skybox anymore. They're calling it the Adobe Immersive tools, which are really excellent tools. In this example, what I've done is we have a shot of a camera person who's walking down the subway hall, but I'm going to kind of put a little fake Banksy graffiti into my shot. So I want to do a little bit of tracking, and you could kind of think this example, maybe you want to sell your clients on the idea that you're going to put their branded content into a 360 project. And hopefully in this example you get a little bit of sort of understand really quickly the power of working in Mocha VR as well. So what we're going to do is go into our effect controls and launch Mocha VR. And I'm just going to start this from scratch. So here I'm in the Mocha VR interface, and we have a handy little 360 button, which also has some shortcuts. So I could, you know, do that and look at the bottom. I could look at the top, etc. With the X key, I can pan around and I can look at my my clip. So we're kind of looking at a rectilinear flat view. And why is this important? Because I'm sure a lot of you who are doing 360 might use the Adobe Immersive tools to, you know, basically look at the composer view, which is essentially very similar, which uses the After Effects camera to take our equirectangular and convert to rectilinear or flattened view. Well, I'll show you why this is very powerful to do this in Mocha VR. It's quite unique, is that if I draw a mask around this woman and her cute little dog down there, by clicking down here on the shape, okay, I've created a mask, and again we have our sort of, there's our mask. Let's look at our equirectangular view. You can see that the mask actually goes across the seams. So the tool itself inside of Mocha VR, it's really built for, I'll hide some of this, it's really built for 360 compositing. If I draw a shape, it immediately shows up across on the other side of the seam. So I can do this, I can do 360 masking without any pre-comping, without dealing with the After Effects camera, which is just going to be, it's a much more streamlined workflow whenever you have to do masking. So what we're going to do is kind of use this concepts. Say I want to put our Banksy logo, or Banksy graffiti image, I want to put it like, you know, right here in this area of the screen. And I could pan around and look at that. Well, what's going to happen as we scroll through here is that's going to go way down, almost off the, out of visibility, right? You're going to see it goes out of focus. In fact, it's way down there. We don't even see those pixels anymore. So I'm going to show you a really cool trick here. What we're going to do is draw a shape, and my shape defines the track area. Okay, so we're telling it this layer 4 in this case, call this track. Layer 4 is going to track this wall. Now, anyone who's seen our tutorials on the removing the cameras, the object removal in Mocha VR, will get this one. There's a cool trick where I can unlink the track from itself. So I'm going to tell the layer that I named track to is set to none. And let's actually just insert a little logo so we can sort of see what we're doing. Pretend that we want to put this logo right on top of that B right there. You know, I have shortcuts here for Q is to move around. W is to rotate, and E to scale. And the projection is actually going to go across the seam, which is very, very cool. Again, that concept of working in this equirectangular or rectilinear space at the same time, and your tracking and your roto tools are working in that view at the very same time. Very, very powerful concept. So I have my surface set, and what we're going to do is go ahead and track forward. And again, the key here is I've set the track to link to none. So let's track forwards and watch what happens. What you're going to see is that the pixels that are coming into the search area, but it's saying static. By default, your search area, meaning your shape, is actually animated and will follow the track. But in this case, we're going to tell it to stay static. So as these clean pixels come into the surface, come into the search area, we're creating a track offset layer that's very, very powerful. You can see those pixels down there are going way, way out of focus. At some point, we probably hit the seam, but we're staying really nice and locked on to that wall. And I think that's a really neat example of just the power of the planar tracker when it's used in 360. Of course, I could adjust this.
I like to say it's like reading all the pixels that run underneath the shape like a little scanner.
Yeah, like a scanner. I've heard you say that one, like a little scanner with an offset concept. Yeah, and that is a huge, huge time saver, especially because a lot of the times when a lot of these 360 clips, we're not looking, you know, Mary and I come from visual effects, where we're very used to working on, you know, 5-second shot or 10-second shot at the very most. But I know a lot of these 360 creators are working on very, very long shots. So rather than having to chase the track with lots of manual offsets, this concept is very, very powerful. Okay, if I hit save, now back here in Premiere, we started tracking kind of towards here down the end. I've actually set this to render as a cutout. And what that means, if we hide these, it's actually rendering that as a cutout, meaning it will obey an alpha, so then I can separate. So I have on V2, I have my tracked cutout. On V2 below it, I have the same exact clip. And why I did that was then I could start adding effects. You know, I could color correct, I could add blurs, etc. So we do have a Continuum VR blur, BCC VR blur. Let's just crank that up a little bit, which will do a seamless blur across the seams for VR. And you get the idea, so we could start matching and pretend, you know, create a simulated depth of field look with our track. So that's a really nice way to work. Again, it's basically using your track data to insert graphics, tracked graphics that is, and then compositing inside of Premiere as a cutout. So that was a quick example of tracking. All right, Mary, did that make sense to you?
That made a lot of sense to me. I think that's a really powerful tool. And a lot of times, you know, people think that they have to use the remove module for like really complex rig removals, and sometimes, honestly, a patch is the best solution. Like if you're on a boat, or if you've got something on top of a car, like, and the lighting is changing really dramatically, you know, a lot of times the remove module is not the best solution for that, but you can use this exact same tool to patch over any nadir problems too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the thing is a lot of people do see Mocha VR or Mocha for that matter, and they might get a little intimidated by the interface, but it can be used for very, very simple tasks. I mean, just a very quick off-the-cuff thing. If I go back here and go back into Mocha, and we create our mask here for our friend with the dog, and even without tracking, just a very, very rough garbage mask, and then we close this and save it, I have the ability to output that as a high-con mask that's going to properly go across the seams. So then if I added an effect, let's add below it, let's add like our VR blur, for example. And I could add the Adobe one for that matter, or the Continuum one if you don't have Continuum. Again, those Continuum ones do do come free with Mocha VR. And we're going to crank that up a little bit. So we're blurring that there. Above it, what we're going to do is then apply this as a mask, and we could invert that or do, you know, that kind of thing. So and feather the mask. So even, you know, for non-moving shots or non-moving, you know, I'm not for tracking, but just the ability to have these, you know, 360 masking tools, very, very powerful.
Exactly. You can also use that same shape to do, again, like an offset where you like cut out the bottom of the shot and, like, you know, replace it, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we have a really nice lens workflow that I could use that same exact idea, and maybe I'm going to jump ahead and show you some of this stuff. The last thing I'll show you before we go into the beta stuff, and I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time. Just want to show you that the remove module that we have, which is another really powerful thing about Mocha VR, is also now working in stereo. I'll show you, you could actually be doing this kind of stuff in Premiere. So this is a shot that a company called Revolver Studios did. They did a really cool project called Cupid, which is a 360 narrative film. So they have like actors, and, you know, it kind of made a really beautiful production. Of course, they want to hide that camera, and so they used Mocha VR to hide the camera. And just kind of like the way, we have lots of videos on our website that kind of cover this technique, but the way we do this is essentially, again, we're in 360, applied Mocha VR to this clip. And if you remember the trick that I just showed you guys with the unlinking, we've already tracked this. So layer 1 is my track for the ground, and it's linked to none. So that is tracked to the movement of the ground. Again, we could look at this in rectilinear or in equirectangular. So we've tracked this area on the ground with that unlinking, so we didn't have to, it automatically creates that offset track. We have also have a shape for the camera layer, which has no keyframes on it, and that's why the gear is not on in this layer. A lot of people don't know these little tricks here, but that gear, every layer that you have the gear enabled, when you hit the track button, it's going to try to track that gear, that layer, sorry. But with it off, I don't need to track it, and that will just make my tracking faster for the layer below it. Plus, it will automatically do an occlusion track, so it allows this layer to track even though the car is in front of it. And then what you do is you go into your Remove tab. You can analyze frames before and after. What I tell a lot of people is you kind of want to dial this down. Martin has an excellent tutorial on our website about how to optimize your remove to save time, because it's literally, well, let's render this, it's literally looking at every frame in your shot. So I don't want to look at every frame, I only want to look at the frames before and after. And it's using a temporal remove technique to actually remove that camera, which was right there, without doing any paint, without doing any manual clone. We have some advanced tools to actually match the illumination, as well as to create clean plates. And again, I would recommend checking out, if this is something that you're interested in, which if you're working in 360, I assume that most people want to remove the camera rather than just put a logo on top of it. And I really recommend that you guys check out the tutorials that are found back here under the Mocha VR section of the website. Lots of cool tutorials to remove. And we're always looking for, Mary and I and Martin are always looking for examples that we can show people. So if I hide this.
And if you have footage, please share it.
Absolutely.
I want to clarify a couple of things real quick. So we had some questions about, does Mocha only work on equirectangular stitched footage? The answer is yes. We only really work on equirectangular stitched footage. We're not a stitcher itself, although we can help you put two disparate and maybe not ideal stitches together. So let's say you have a stitch that fixes one side of your shot, and then you have another stitch that fixes the other side of your shot. You can combine those together using Mocha Roto, but in general we need to have an equirectangular image that is finished to work on. Another question that somebody had, unless you want to add something, Ross?
No, yeah, I do know some companies, some different 360 companies that have used Mocha because of the robust masking, like you say, and they will literally run multiple stitches, of multiple passes of a stitch, and then do the clean stitch, clean roto on top of like the foreground elements and marry them back together.
Yep.
Also, one other interesting workflow is we have seen some 360 projects where the cameras were not like a one-piece camera where they have multiple camera rigs, and the cameras were not aligned properly, which they actually would use Mocha, not even the VR product, but Mocha Pro itself, to stabilize each camera on their own. So yeah, we're not a stitch solution at all, but we do have some tools to assist in the stitching process.
Basically, yeah, making the stitches a lot prettier than they were. Another quick thing to point out is, why were you doing a unlinked track on the background track? And there's two reasons for that. One is because as you read the footage that comes underneath the nadir, you actually have the most high-res pixels in the entire shot to track. So that's one reason. You always want to track from areas with the largest amount of detail to the smallest amount of detail. The other reason is because when you do a remove, you actually are telling the remove to look at the background pixels to replace the foreground pixels, and if you have that shape slide away by linking the shape to the track itself, what will happen is that shape will slide off screen and you won't be using those pixels anymore to replace the foreground object. So the background object always has to be around the foreground object.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a really quick visual way we can kind of think about what Mary just said. So here's I'm going to avoid the camera and I'm going to do two tracks at the same time. I'm going to track this layer 3 right here. Let's leave it, we'll leave it red, and on this layer on the other side of the camera, we'll make that green, right? And this side, we're going to tell it to unlink. This side is linked to itself. And we're going to show the surface for both of them. And let's go ahead and track. And I just want to show you the difference here. Okay, what you're going to see is the layer that is linked, which is the default, the red one on the left-hand side of the camera. That is going to change the search area and the tracking data itself are linked together. So at some point, especially if this is a 10-minute long clip, this is going to go up way off into the distance, right? Where the layer on the right, I've unlinked it, so the search area stays static, and we're creating this offset relationship between our tracking data that's very unique to this software. So that's a really kind of visual way how you can see the real difference between that this layer is unlinked and this layer is linked. This is going to save you a lot of time because you're setting it up as an offset track, just by default. But keep in mind that if a foreground element came into this area, say someone's boot or shoe, or a foreground element came into this area with different motion, I would have to mask them out or else avoid them by moving the search area. We're basically telling the software that this is one continuous, all the pixels that come into the search area are on the same plane. Okay, so hopefully yeah, go ahead.
We keep having one question that I think we need to sort of address, and it's recaptioning. Okay, a lot of people want to know: is there any way to get the text in the insert to follow where the viewer is looking at all times? And what this is actually doing is it's actually rendering into the equirectangular image. You're actually putting an insert that gets rendered out. So you're not going to have it be able to follow in real time where the person is looking inside of the headset. That would actually have to be a separate programmable thing on top of the software. I think it's included in the YouTube player, for example, but that's because it's actually part of the player itself. It's not rendered into the actual pixels.
Yeah, we're not adding, we're not doing anything that is going to be following the field of view or the headset. Everything that Mocha is doing, or any of our tools are doing, we're making these post-production tools to enable editors and colorists and visual effects artists to better process and better finish their footage, but we're not really doing anything with the actual headset view. That said, if I do track this wall, with a graphic on it and go ahead and let that go, that graphic is going to be, you know, married to the movement, right?
Of course.
So, you know, but as far as the head, you know, are we using the actual headset view? No, we're not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's you would literally have to have that as part of a player because it's a separate layer that would be on top of the render of your equirectangular image that's being projected.
Yeah, and I do know that there are different softwares that are working in this space. It's just not something, you know, at core, Boris FX is making visual effects and post-production tools. Left eye, the hero view, okay? And you have a linked relationship in our track tab between the left and the right. So if we look at our right, you can see that stereo disparity, it's totally not matched. And I could manually move that over, but I'm not going to do. I'm going to let the software actually figure out the disparity. So this button right here you will not find in the shipping version. It's only in the beta. Track all views. What we're going to do is turn that on. I'm just going to track one frame. What's actually doing is tracking the left, then it tracks the right, and it figures out the disparity between the two. So that's really cool because then now I have a linked mask on my left and my right. Let's go ahead and just track this a couple, you know, let this go a little bit. This is a large file, so you're going to see this might kind of start slowing down as far as your tracking processing. We do use GPU tracking, so the faster GPU card you have in your system will get you a better track as far as time-wise, but this might be something that I would res down to a proxy resolution for my track. So we've just done our track for these frames right here. If we look at our right view, our right is offset as well, and you have a great relationship between, you know, if I want to go in here and then really finesse my my roto shape, obviously you could start adding keyframes. And watch what happens if I, if on that frame, I'll go to here and say if I pull this frame out here, we just animated those across time. If we look at our right view, we have a linked relationship. So I do not have to do something where I mask on one eye and then copy all that data to another eye in another comp. I'm actually doing stereo roto on both eyes at the same time. And if I look at the right eye has its own keyframes. So you do your keyframes first on your hero, your left, and then you can add separate keyframes. So the green and the red represents the keyframes for each eye. If I'm happy with that and hit save, we have the concept here of a 360 mask, right? So this could be used for stereo compositing, for stereo color correction, and having this stereoscopic masking tool right inside of Premiere is very, very powerful. To remind you guys, though, if I'm collaborating with other artists, if I've done masking, right, if I have an animated mask, I could export this shape data to almost any application. So I could send this out to Fusion, to a Flame artist, to Nuke artists. So the fact that Mocha is sort of like what we like to call internally the Swiss Army knife of tracking and masking, and that you can work with interop with other systems is very, very powerful. And that whole concept is going to work the same way on tracking. So if I draw a shape here on this door, and let's just show the surface, say it's like we actually want to put a painting behind this woman.
Do you know, this is what I usually call, you know, a lot of people think of it as offset tracking, but it's really just the way you track in Mocha. You just find the similarly moving pixels because it's all planar.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to track the door, and you know, those of us who've been using Mocha for a while, you kind of get the idea. Like, I only want to track the edges of the door. I don't want to track all this detail in the door itself because those are just kind of like blank pixels in a sense, right? So we really want to use the details that we can grab from the edges of the door, and then we have an offset track here. Let's just throw a grid right on top of this woman's face here. But you get the idea. If I track both views at the same time, again, we have this concept of stereo disparity between left and right eye. Just go ahead and let that track. And even though she is walking in front, what we would have is a track, we're tracking the motion of this this wall, and we would have this. It would properly the insert graphic would be properly aligned in our stereoscopic space as well with that disparity. So things like tracking, horizon stabilization, which I showed you a mono version of that earlier, the remove module to remove cameras, that is all now working in the beta, and we're really quite curious to have the 360 creators try out this stereoscopic tools in the beta. So, whoa, that's a lot to talk about in 1 hour.
Yeah, we have covered a lot.
Yeah, we did, and all in Premiere, which is kind of cool. Again, everything I showed you could be run in other hosts. So at this point, I don't know if there's any other questions. If not, I'd love to invite Jesse Petrov, who's our Director of Marketing, onto the call to announce the winners.
Sure. Okay, so today's winner of the Mocha VR 1-year subscription is Melody Myers. The 1-year subscription to Continuum 11 is Javier Moreno. And the 1-year subscription to Sapphire is Suzanne Lagerwage. Sorry if I said your last name wrong. I also just wanted to, I saw a lot of questions pop up regarding if you buy a new version of Mocha VR and the Continuum VR unit. So if right now for a limited time, if you buy a new license of Mocha VR, or if you upgrade from Mocha Pro 5, you will get the Continuum VR unit for free, but that's only a limited time offer. So to thank the people who have previously purchased Mocha VR, and it seems to be a lot of you have popped up on the questions panel, we're offering 50% off the Continuum VR unit. The discount code for that, I posted it inside the questions panel, but if you didn't see it, it's the letters VR50_BCC. And if you use that in our web shop, you'll receive half off the Continuum unit.
Yeah, so the way you would do that is on the web shop under store, Continuum VR unit, it defaults to $199. If you own Mocha VR, you will be able to add once you add this to your cart, add the coupon code. That will take a half price, makes that a half price sale there. And even though we're only currently supporting Adobe and Avid hosts with this VR unit, the license that you would get if you buy it now will eventually support both Apple and OFX. So you won't have to upgrade or change that. So that will be a multi-host license of Continuum VR unit, which is those 5 plugins that I showed at the beginning.
So if you buy Mocha VR, you get the Continuum units half off.
No, if you buy Mocha VR, you actually get the Continuum units absolutely free.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm sorry, I was confused.
Yeah, so yeah, you'll see that if you buy a brand new Mocha VR, you'll get these the Continuum unit for free.
Yes.
If you don't own Mocha VR and sorry, if you previously purchased Mocha VR, you'll get a half price.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, that was not clear. Wonderful. Yeah.
And I know a lot of users who come to these webinars already own Mocha Pro. And like Jesse mentioned, if say I'm running Mocha Pro on Adobe and I want to upgrade to Mocha VR, it's only $300 to add the VR features, and you will also get the Continuum unit free. So that's a really awesome deal.
And you can also save 10% off of it right now if you use our discount code.
Yeah, we have lots of great ways to
We're sending out an email after the webinar that will also reiterate all of this.
Great. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we want to give you a deal for tuning in. So.
All right, Mary, Jesse, thanks for hanging in there with me, and I really want to thank everyone for joining us. Again, it's Ross and Mary and Jesse from Boris FX. And feel free to contact us and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in future webinars. Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.